Hello, and welcome back to some more Project Crossover. I know it's been a while since the announcement trailer, but now I'm back to discuss a few basic things about the game, mainly the name and structure of this video series. Let's go over the structure first. Each video in this series will cover a different topic, and I have a bit of a roadmap of how and when content will be discussed. As I've said, we'll start with the name and structure in this video. And then in the next video, we'll discuss the presentation. Then we'll go to the gameplay, then we'll discuss the roster a little bit, and then we'll go through the marketing. After that, we'll talk about the story, and as we do, I'll make videos about each of the playable characters, explaining how they would play in this game. Once that's done, we'll finish off this series with the DLC. There's a chance that I'll shift videos around depending on how much I finalized each element, or I may hold off on doing a video until later in the series. For example, while I plan to go over each character as they're introduced in the story, I may hold off on doing a video if I don't have the complete character concept ready, or maybe their moveset involves a story element we won't see until later. While talking about characters, each video will include a brief rundown of who each character is, as some people watching may not be familiar with certain characters. Like, I'm sure most of you know who Mario is, but I don't know how many of you know who Dudw is. One of the things I love about crossovers is how they can introduce you to all kinds of interesting characters, and I want to make sure that everyone watching understands who each character is and what they can do. However, I might include spoiler material in a character's moveset if necessary, and if that's the case, I will make sure to disclose if a spoiler is present in the video. I might even move the spoiler part to the end of the video to make sure you understand the gist of the character without going into any major spoilers about their series. But that's enough about characters for now. I also wanted to address the story a little bit. For a long time, I had a pretty good idea of how I wanted the story to go. However, around the time I made that announcement video, I started having ideas of how I could make the story better, and I decided to rewrite it. I'm nowhere close to being done with the rewrite, and I have no idea how many videos it will take to get through the story, as a lot of the ideas I have for it are pretty ambitious. This is why the story is going to be covered later in this series, but I hope that by the time we're through the other topics, the story will be in a more complete state. Thankfully, in comparison to the story, everything else is much closer to being finished. Anyway, that's enough about the structure. Let's talk about the name. Why is this series called Project Crossover? Well, there are two main reasons why. First and foremost, the name just came to me when I was thinking about doing a crossover story. See, I used to have this series in middle school called Media All-Stars, but there was a time when I wanted to move away from doing crossover stories and focus on original ideas. However, I wasn't able to resist for long, and soon enough, I started coming up with ideas for a new crossover story, one that would be my magnum opus. And when I thought about crossover stories, one that came to mind was Project Cross Zone. Now, I mentioned in the last video that this series had nothing to do with Project Cross Zone, outside of inspirations for the story and world building, but I forgot to mention the influence on the name as well. For a bit more context, Project Cross Zone is a series of crossovers between video game companies Namco, Capcom, and Sega, with Nintendo characters being featured in the second game. The plot of each game was essentially a Worlds Collide storyline with a massive lineup of video game characters as the focus. I've always seen that as a fun premise, and I wanted to recreate something like that on a similar, if not greater scale. Project Crossover's name came to me out of a desire to create a large crossover plot, and while I'm aware that other Project Crossover stories exist, I hope I can do my best to make my own story stand out. And as for the second reason, well, that has to do with the story itself, so I won't get into it now. Stay tuned on that one. I also decided not to call the game something like Media All-Stars or Entertainment All-Stars to keep things simple and not make it seem like the characters featured are the definitive characters that everyone thinks about when they talk about entertainment. I mean, I could show you 5 characters in this game and tell you that I think they're all-stars, and I'm sure you would disagree with me. Which is fine. Everyone has different views and opinions about media, and you're allowed to have your own thoughts. Just don't be a jerk about it. But yeah, that's pretty much the reason why Project Crossover has its name. It's straight to the point, it foretells a massive crossover story, and it holds a bit of plot significance as well. Now, the last thing I'll discuss in this video is the Project Crossover logo, which I made myself. There are references to some of the series represented in the game, including a few unannounced ones. In particular, we have 4 unannounced characters represented on the logo, and I'm going to reveal 3 of them. The C in Project is a reference to Pac-Man. There's a Pokeball representing Ash and Pikachu, and we have a Digivice representing Tai and Agumon. That's 3 more characters added to the roster. But what about the other reference? Well, I plan to reveal that character at a later time, and believe me, I can't wait to tell you who it is. The logo itself is a little rough, but I thought the idea of several logos clashing with each other was nice. When I started working on the design, I thought ahead about which logos I wanted to represent each letter. Most of the letters were easy to pick out, such as the C in Crossover being from Ratchet & Clank's logo, or the P in Project is from Persona. But I had to get creative with a couple of them, including the T, which represents Adventure Time. The T from that series' logo didn't look right when put together with the other letters, so I decided to use the sword from the logo instead. I think that was a good choice, because it's an iconic part of the Adventure Time logo, and it helps make Project Crossover's logo stand out. Combine that with the items around the logo, and I have a pretty nice, albeit kinda rough, logo for my game. On that note, I want to do more art for the game as well, including storyboards for the story portion, so I hope you look forward to seeing those in the future. And with that, we've covered the structure of the series, the name, and the logo. And we revealed a few more characters as well. Next time, we'll discuss the presentation, including the art style and audio. If you have any additional questions about Project Crossover so far, please leave them in the comments. I won't answer anything spoiler related though. Have a nice day, and I'll see you next time for some more Project Crossover. Goodbye!